Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started now. So thank you for attending our session and Engage in the Cloud Student Behavioral Threat Assessment. My name is Cindy Swearingen. I am the Assistant Executive Director with the Office of School Safety and Security. This session is being recorded, just so you'll know, in case you ask any questions or anything, they'll be out there. Maybe you want to put them in the chat, but just so you'll know, it's being recorded, and this will be housed on the Engage website, as well as you can play it back later. So just wanted to know that you'll do that as well. So, okay, welcome to the session. And go ahead, Jason. I have Jason in the background. He's kind of running the slideshow. We'll have him kind of move through to the next slide, Jason. Okay, so Jason's a very important person, and I wanted you all to see him, even though it was short-lived. And so Jason is our technical assistance person. He's running the slideshows for us, but also Jason is the one, and he'll put his contact information in the chat as well. We have our contact information here on this page, but this is just a brief overview of BTA, Behavioral Threat Assessment, or BTAM, sometimes it's called Behavioral Threat Assessment Management. We also have a micro-credentialing piece, which means basically you go in and it's an LMS, an asynchronous learning platform where you can go in and take the training, get all the forms and everything, and then actually have it printed on your teaching certificate. We also have a micro-credentialing piece for school safety and security professional. And so if you're interested in either one of those two micro-credentialing pieces, Jason is your man. So he's going to put the information in the chat. You can reach out to him. He will send you that information on how to get started on that. So here's our team. As I said, we have John Parker. He's our Executive Director of School Safety and Security. Myself, my contact information there. Michael Ann Uten, Steve Lynch, Lindsay Moore, and Jason Gray. And Lindsay's our coordinator. She does all she keeps us all in line. As I said, Jason, he does a lot of the technical assistance. So what our team does is we are non-compliance. We do a lot of professional development. We're only at your school if you call and invite us there. We can do walkthroughs. We can help you with our main goal is to develop your EOP, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Here's our mission. At our core, we are here to assist you with safety and security concerns. We're a valuable resource. We're constantly learning. We're constantly attending trainings and meetings. This is not a gotcha moment, as again, we're not compliance. We're only there if you invite us and say, hey, come help us with our safety and security issues. But our primary goal is to provide training, assistance, and guidance in the creation of a high quality school emergency operation plan, which is using the REMS model, which is Readiness Emergency Management for Schools. And that is through the U.S. Department of Education. So again, we provide tons of professional development. Some of those, I'm going to do a short little plug for our program. We do options-based thinking, which is permission to live, where we teach about evade, shelter, and defend. We also have that 6-step process to developing that emergency operation plan, which is vital for any school. Bomb making awareness. And so that's one of those programs that we've done a lot of work with. It's called CISM, which is Cybersecurity Network through Homeland Security. And kind of a little background on that is the Columbine shooting was never intended to be a shooting event. It was designed to be a bombing attempt. They just weren't very good bomb makers, so the bombs didn't actually go off. But it talks about the history of that and where the Secret Service and Homeland Security believe that school bombings are moving towards. Again, this behavioral threat assessment, this is not one of those trainings that's just for administration. It is for everyone needs to have some knowledge of behavioral threat assessment. And so that's why it's important for the whole school to learn that. Again, I've already mentioned the micro-credentialing pieces. I'm now certified to teach human trafficking in the state of Oklahoma. So I do have Human Trafficking 101 for educators. We have some social media, online presence awareness program. We have school safety for the littles, like an early childhood preparedness training. How do we teach preparedness to the little ones? Then again, we have some current drug trends and continuity operations. So we have a ton of training that is available to you. We also, on our webpage, I believe Jason's going to put that in the chat if he hasn't already, we have some webinars that we have set. We've actually thrown those into some TED-Eds where you can actually receive certificates of training if you watch those. So you have our contact information. Go to our webpage, contact us for any professional development aspects that you need, and just whatever we can do to help. So, okay, let's go ahead and get started now. Jason, if you'll move it on through. So our objective for this program here is to discuss and examine the OSD's Student Behavioral Threat Assessment System. We'll talk about BTA, Behavioral Threat Assessments. We're going to develop a basic understanding of threat assessment as a prevention model, how to prevent those bad things from happening, and just an awareness of the supports and trainings. And again, supports and trainings are vital that we discuss some of those. Okay, Jason? So I do hope that you've had the opportunity to watch some of the earlier programs or the earlier sessions on Engage. I just watched Elizabeth Suttis trauma-informed training, and she's just so great. And just so much of what our counseling cohorts teach rolls right in and dovetails into this behavioral threat assessment training and to our whole Office of School Safety and Security. So if you haven't had the opportunity to watch Elizabeth Suttis trauma-informed training, I highly encourage you to go back, because it makes more sense, right? So why do we assess, right? Why do we? Well, one of the reasons is because if you reach out and look at any type of publications that's out there now, you're going to find all of the major events or the major organizations talking about behavioral threat assessment. So here's one from CISM, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, the K-12 Security Guide. It's all about training and people and behavioral threat assessments. Averting targeted school violence, again, from the Secret Service. This document here, it talks about how maybe behavioral threat assessments has helped avert some major events. And so it's a great document. Then we've got another Secret Service, Enhancing School Safety Using a Threat Assessment Behavior Model. And then just the Secret Service National Behavioral Threat Assessment, Protecting America's Schools, Analysis of Targeted School Violence. So many of our larger organizations, U.S. Department of Ed, Secret Service, FBI, all of those have developed behavioral threat assessment because it works, right? And some of the books that I really enjoy, and I'm going to reference, is this right here, is the John Vandrell Assessing Student Threats. And this is my favorite, though. 15-minute focus, brief counseling techniques at work, behavioral threat assessment management for schools. It's written by Dr. Melissa Reeves. She was the past president of Oklahoma, NASP, a National Association of School Psychologists. It's just a real quick read with a lot of good information in it. So why do we assess? Well, again, it is out there. If you're doing any sort of behavioral training or behavioral thought process thinking, behavioral threat assessment is out there. So in the last 2 years alone, we've had Florida, Kentucky, Maryland, Texas, and Washington have made it law, passed legislation that schools, districts must implement some sort of behavioral threat assessment. Hawaii actually just reached out to Jason and said, hey, we hear you guys have got a great behavioral threat assessment management program, our learning management system. Can we talk to you about that? But we know in the past, other than those 5 listed there have been others that have listed previously. And so it's just legislation is coming down that some of those threat assessment behaviors need to be addressed. And so it's just very important that we assess. Okay, Jason. So let's take a minute on threatening behavior. What is that? Well, again, in my handy dandy little book here, they're like, a threat is an expression of intent to cause harm. It can be communicated verbally, visually, in writing, electronically, such as social media, or other means. And it has the potential to significantly disrupt the school or workplace environment. So we know that. And by law, we have a threatening behavior, have a low threshold. What that means is any verbal threat or threatening behavior, whether it's directed at another person or not, which indicates potential for future harm for students, school personnel, or school property. So by law, if a first grader comes in, bang, bang, we've seen that on the news, well, that's stupid. Why did they? No, because that was a law, right? A low threshold. If someone says they're going to do harm, where their kids say, I'm going to blow this place up, that's a threatening behavior. You have to report to law enforcement. That is law. That's mandatory reporting. No matter where that behavior or where that threat is, you have to report that, mandatory. And it's a good faith immunity. If you have reasonable belief that that is a threat, then yes, you're going to report that. So why assess? Well, there are different kinds of threats. We talked about those earlier, just a minute ago, the different kinds of threats, how they may be portrayed. So there's direct threats, right? And that's a statement of clear, explicit intent to harm, right? It's usually communicated and a target is identified. An example of a direct threat could be, I'm going to kill Mr. Smith for expelling me. An indirect threat is a violence is implied or it's paraphrased. I could do it if I wanted to, or you'll all be sorry. Then we have conditional threats. That's a statement that's made contingent on a set of circumstances. If he's here tomorrow, we'll get him back for what he did. And then there's veiled threats. They're vague. They're subject to interpretations. Often we may see those in drawings, poetry, social media posts, gestures, wherever. I just wish this entire place would go away. I'm sick and tired of everyone. Does it ever get any better than this? So those are some of the different kinds of threats. And when we talk about why we're assessed, those are some of the things that we're assessing. Threat, aggression, or violence to a specific identified target with a motive and a plan. Threat, aggression, or violence is causing considerable fear, disruption to activity. We've had those, right? I've been in education 33 years. I started out as a first grade teacher, then I moved into counseling, middle school principal, superintendent. I retired as superintendent and now work for the Office of School Safety and Security. So I've seen all of these. We've all dealt with some of these things, and we'll talk about that, what it feels like in the school session in just a minute. If there's a weapon at school or an attempt to bring a weapon. And one of the really good things in our LMS, our learning management system, it actually takes you through some of these data pieces and some of these scenarios. And there are 2 kids with weapons at school. Who's a threat and who's not a threat? Is there a continued intent to carry out the threat? Is there a history of threats, aggression, or violence? Staff, parents, student intuition, sometimes, man, it's just that gut, you just understand that gut feeling. And is administrator unable to determine if a situation poses a risk to school personnel or the community? What I love as an administrator about the behavioral threat assessment is it is a team effort. Everybody comes in and everybody's equal, and we put in our information and we all move forward and we make that decision together. Okay, Jason? Prediction versus prevention versus prediction. So we go to the doctor, right, to stay safe, to stay healthy. We do what we're supposed to do. We should eat right. We should exercise. We should do all of those. But a doctor can't tell you if or when you're going to have a heart attack. Medical professional looks at risk factors and warning signs to develop a treatment plan. It's the same as behavioral threat assessment. In order to prevent acts of targeted violence, our student threat assessment teams look at risk factors and warning signs to develop a mitigation plan. And so that's what we do. We have these meetings, we talk it through, and we can see if that student is on the pathway to violence, where is he, and then what supports can we put in. Okay, Jason. So as I talked about earlier, when we talked about especially as a middle school, right? Middle school, high school person, even elementary. Sometimes we know that we feel like what we do every day is herding cats and we just pull everybody together. So this is just kind of a lighthearted piece that shows that we understand what it's like to be educators. Okay, Jason?
This man right here is my great-grandfather. He's the first cat herder in our family.
Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy.
Anybody can herd cattle. Holding together 10,000 half-wild short hairs, well, that's another thing altogether.
Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning, right here, and if you look at his face, it's just ripped to shreds, You
see the movies, you hear the stories, I'm living a dream. Not everyone can do what we do.
I wouldn't do nothing else.
It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town and you ain't lost a one of them, ain't a feeling like it in the world.
All right, in a sense, this is what we do, right? When we bring them all into town and everybody's unscathed and not hurt, this is what we do as educators. Sometimes it feels just like that. And we're going to use the cat scenario as we move through this, just because it works, right? So here we have behavioral threat assessment. We have these cats here. Reactive or predatory. We want protection for all, so reactive or predatory. Is that student being reactive to something that has happened to him? Maybe bullying, maybe some of those trauma pieces that we've all learned about, or is it predatory? Are they on a hunt, right? And you can tell which one is which. Protection for all. Maybe someone's making something up. Maybe that person, you think that person's a predatory, but after the assessment, we find out, no, he's really not a threat. It is a systematic team process. Don't skip the steps. Go through those steps, answer those questions, be methodical about it, answer the facts only. And then there's a level 1 and level 2 designations, and that is on our BTA LMS, our micro-credentialing. So if you go through both of those LMSs and get that on your teaching certificate, you can have BTAM level 1 or BTAM level 2, behavioral threat assessment and management team members. So we're very excited about that. Okay, Jason. Here's another one. Another cat. There's lots of cat references in this one. And this is just kind of, well, I'm just going to let you watch it. So Jason, show it on through.
Pinky. Hi, this is Pinky.
Wait, start again. Hold on. Go.
This is Pinky. He's a male cat, domestic short hair. He's available for adoption. He's pet of the week, Placer County Animal Shelter. He's a very loving cat.
Hang on, please. Oh, yeah. Pinky.
Pinky.
Pinky. Whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Well, we got a wildcat on our hands. Pinky, settle down, bud. Careful, Cole. Careful. Why don't I get a catch pole? Somebody get a catch pole.
Oh. Pinky.
Just set it over there.
No.
Get a catch pole.
Need a catch-all pole to get him?
Yeah, because I'm not going to grab him. Oh, dude.
Watch it, he's caught up in there.
Yeah,
Just
I know.
disconnected from the deck. You got him back?
Use my language.
So Pinky was a very lovable cat. He probably was under any other circumstances. He felt threatened here, right? So he was not an aggressive predatory cat. What he was doing, he was reacting to those impulses and he was reacting to the scenario put around him. He wasn't targeted. He didn't premeditate Pinky to crawl up that guy's leg and bite him on the leg, right? It wasn't predatory. So that targeted and reactive piece is what we talk about as we go through and we learn about those kind of things. Okay, Jason. So here we have the reactive aggression. So we also learn about howlers and hunters. Reactive aggression are a lot of time the howlers, and we learn about that in this book too. She references howlers and hunters, and a lot of the BTA books reference that. The howlers are the ones who make all the noise, right? He is reacting to some sort of aggression. Something's scaring this cat. He's backed in a corner. His claws are out. His mouth's open. His ears are down. He's focused in. He's making some noise. He's showing everything that he's got, right? Because someone's come around and scared him. Someone's bullied him. Someone's pushed him. Someone has done something. And he's reacting to an outside force. This cat wasn't planned. Pinky didn't plan to do what he did. He's in an elevated emotional state. He feels under immediate threat, right? So that is the reactive aggression. Not to say that if we go through this BTA and we decide, no, he's not a threat, he just made a threat, that there aren't systems and supports put in place. We're just saying we're trying to delineate the violent behavior and the violence to pathways. So in this book, she talks about one kid that is on his game. He was given some gaming time. And I believe it was a paraprofessional said, you know, Johnny, put your game away. He didn't put it away. So she walked over and grabbed it out of his hand, and he just lost it. He ran down the hallway screaming, I'm going to kill you. I hate this place, blah, blah, blah. People heard that. So this kid was reacting to a situation. And so the situation, you know, you can't just go around doing that kind of stuff. So maybe the management piece is not only for the kid, but also for that paraprofessional, for that teacher. And so that's one of the things that we have coming in the spring is a whole nother de-escalation training piece for everybody. And so the management piece we'll talk about in just a minute. It's not always just for the kids. Maybe we need some different kind of supports put in place. Okay, Jason. So we move from reactive to targeted to predatory, that targeted violence, right? This cat over here, he is on the prowl for something. He sees a little bird, a mouse, or something over there. He's crouched down. He's very quiet. He's got his ears pricked up to here. He is laser focused on whatever it is that he is going after. He is not reacting. This cat right here, he is not reacting to anything. He is very focused. He has a plan in place. He is not snapping. He's not going mental. He is plan in place, and he is pushing that initiative through. This is the result of an understandable and often discernible process of thinking and behaving. So he has a plan in place. He knows what his target is. He has put everything in place. He's been watching. He's just ready to pounce. So that's the difference between reactive and targeted violence. Okay, Jason. And here is the targeted violence pathway to intended violence. And so it starts out as we step up. And the beauty of this is anytime we can stop the pathway of violence by using a behavioral threat assessment and then putting in supports, we can stop it at any level before it gets to that attack, right? We can put in supports, we can put in wraparound services, we can do whatever we need to do, but the pathway to intended violence can be stopped. But usually it starts out, they have a grievance, right? A grievance against someone. It could be a broken heart, right? Girlfriend broke up with boyfriend, boyfriend broke up with girlfriend, kid gets a bad grade. One of the situations, so I went down to one school and helped facilitate a BTA on a student. A student had written the principal a letter and said, you made my mama cry, you're going to pay for it. We did this grievance, and he was going to suspend the kid. And the kid was like, fine, whatever, take me home. I'll just clean my gun. The grievance was he made his mama cry. The kid acted up at school. Principal called mama, told mama what had been going on. The mama was upset and crying. Now, this kid had many trauma related ACEs in his life, a lot going on at home. Dad was in prison. And there were some other family dynamics going on there, but dad was in prison for selling drugs. And that's all he wanted to do, right? He didn't need school. He didn't care if he got kicked out of school. He just needed to make money like dad was and support his mama. And so that was his grievance. He had some ideations. He had guns. He wasn't to the point of preparation, but he was talking. And so a lot of the time, the ideation, research, and planning is when they start talking about and referencing other activities, right? And so other larger events, they start talking about those, maybe in their journal writing, drawings. They may talk about some of those other past instances or even some of those people. And so it goes up to preparation, breach, and then attack. And again, if we can stop this path of intended violence anywhere along this continuum, we have a much better outcome just in that averting school violence. It's a really good research document on how they averted at any level in here, how they did that. When you think about Parkland shooting, I believe it was over 30 times that the Parkland shooter, that student had interactions with police. School, had been kicked out of school, all sorts of things, and no one ever really did anything, right? They didn't talk to each other. So that's why this BTA is so important as we go through. Okay, Jason. This is a hard one, a really, really difficult one, because suspension versus supervision. And so as a teacher, if something happened, I wanted that kid out, right? I wanted that kid out of my classroom. I didn't want him in school. But as an administrator, we kind of looked at things differently because are we safer as a community and as a school if that kid is in school where we can have eyes on him, where he's got maybe some positive relationship or something, and we kind of can monitor him, than we are with him at home. Because what's going to happen if he's at home all day? So we're suspending for 3 days. What's going to happen to those 3 days he's at home? We've just provided social isolation. We've just provided him the opportunity to move towards mobilizing that component of pathway to violence. We've also accelerated the process because we talk about that grievance. Man, he is hot on his on his heels now. He's really got a grievance now. And we provide him time with planning and material acquisition. We provide him time with research. We provide him time during the day where he can go buy, maybe he's got a gun, or maybe he can go, to the store and buy some tannerite and, develop a bomb or something. So we have to think about that. And that's when we talk about BTAM, the management piece is so important that we really take attention to what that looks like, because we don't want to suspend a kid, just kick him out, and then we don't know what he's doing. So we may have to have a little mindset. And when I talked earlier, this is not just for counselors and administrators. This is for all school personnel, because teachers need to understand what happens sometimes, why we don't suspend, and why we bring them back for different reasons. We need to keep our eyes on them. But again, it's a team decision, and law enforcement is part of this team. Your team consists of an administrator, mental health, which could be a counselor, and law enforcement. So you all put your heads together and you really talk this through. So this suspension versus supervision is really a big piece on the management part of it. Okay, Jason. Now it is your responsibility though, the supervision versus suspension. We do have an educational obligation, that positive adult relationships. One thing we can do is at the beginning of the year, that school climate, really look at the systems change, and do we have a positive school climate? Do kids feel welcome? Does staff feel welcome? Because it's not always the students who can make threats, right? Do people come to your school and feel welcome? And do they feel safe once they're there? Does every student have at least one positive adult relationship? One of the things I learned back a long time ago when I was principal, I was going through Principal Academy, and I was at a training at OU, and they said, put chart sheets up in the lounge, write every student's name, say 7th grade, write every 7th grader's name on there, and then put a check mark beside it if you have a personal relationship with that kid. And then step back and look and see which ones have one or none. And then really focus in on trying to make sure that every student has at least one positive adult relationship in there. There's one case study where a student had developed a plan. He was going to go shoot up the school. And but he had X's on the classrooms where he was not going to go. And someone said, why weren't you go in this classroom and this classroom? He said, they talked to me. They were nice to me. Simple as that. And so important that we have those all adult positive relationships, peer relationships, right? Do we provide supports to kids for whatever it is that they're, band, gaming, athletics? It's not all about football. There are so many different aspects that kids really get into. And so we need to make sure that we provide kids an outlet, a way that they can find other adult or peer positive relationships. And then what are inhibitors, right? What can we do to make sure that we provide positive learning experiences, just like that educational, just like that teacher that I talked about, where she went and grabbed that kid's phone out of his hand where he couldn't play anymore. Are there ways that we can provide de-escalation training to staff, to all staff? We all need to be that reminder again. And just like Elizabeth said in her training earlier, man, it's just, people just need to be kind, right? Just be kind to each other. And we need to remember that as educators. Okay, Jason. So the basic structure of a BTA is monthly meetings with a level 1 team. This is not a one and done, right? We're not just going to have this when we have a kid to discuss something new on the horizon. It's not a one and done. You should have what gets monitored gets accomplished. So if you put it on the calendar at the beginning of the school year and you know every second Tuesday of every month you're going to have this. Now you may have to have more as an emergency comes along or as a threat comes along, but law enforcement, mental health professionals, and school administrators are the main ones that need to be on there. And you can bring others in, coaches, teachers, special education personnel, people who know the students. So if you've got a specific student that you're discussing and they have a really good connection with the VOAG teacher, bring him in. If they have a really good connection with the PE coach, bring that PE coach in. And so know who needs to be in for each kid. And then if you don't have anyone to discuss that month, simply review some of the other ones, see if they're making progress, see if there's been any indication that they're moving upwards on that scale or downwards on that continuum. And then you can have tabletop exercise as well. If you don't have any situation that requires kind of the what ifs, if this happens, and again, contact us, we can lead those tabletop exercises. We can talk you through some of the scenarios, and then you can see how you're going to handle it in your class. Main thing is document, document, document. That is your due diligence, right? You're going to write down everything. We provide the forms, you document everything that you do. And then that's just going to help as you go through. Okay, Jason. This is the M part on BTAM, Behavioral Threat Assistant Management. And so again, it's not just students that we have to manage, provide that management. Again, that training piece, those ACEs training, trauma trainings, de-escalation training that we're going to have soon, all of those pieces. And we need to manage our people who are managing our kids, right? But the definition of management, deliberate steps taken to minimize or mitigate the threat of violence. And how are we going to do that? Well, one of those are going to be by threat assessment teams, a trained threat assessment team, right? And implemented by many community stakeholders. So we may be bringing in different people as we come through, but those management considerations are going to be a different pieces. Maybe it's just going to be monitoring, right? Maybe we're going to say, okay, he doesn't pose a threat, but he's got some issues out there. And of course I use he just as the normal pronoun, but maybe we want him or her to check in, right? Check in and check out. Maybe we're going to have a safety contact. Maybe we're going to have adults are going to increasing their visual on him. Maybe they arrive late. Maybe they have to leave early. And so there are modified daily schedule. Again, some of these management considerations again comes in this book, and it's really good. And on our behavioral threat assessment piece, we also have some really good management considerations. Maybe it's just system changes, right? Maybe we need to build relationships and manage those relationships. And we've talked about that earlier in that school climate piece. Maybe we need to provide a peer mentor. Maybe if it's a middle school kid, maybe we can bring somebody from the high school down and talk to them, or at the elementary, and have that peer mentorship going through. Adult mentorship, de-escalation training for staff. Again, we talked about that earlier. Trauma-informed training, peer supports. So all of those can be a system change. Maybe we need skill development and resiliency building. This is a topic of conversation with my team this morning, is resiliency building, right? Maybe we need to have academic supports, anger management groups, social skills. If you've got an LPC in your school, have them start seeing them on a regular basis to teach some of these. Counseling, family supports, those wraparound services, functional behavioral assessments, and it goes on and on. And then maybe we do need to have some discipline coming into place. Maybe they need to write a letter of apology, maybe some conflict resolution, alternative placement, expulsion, diversion, some of those, and it goes on and on, those behavior discipline issues can be. And then we can look at the biggie, school climate and culture, right? Maybe we need to address a systematic procedural policy problems. Again, we need to have that caring and positive supportive climate and culture. Enhance social emotional learning. Maybe we need to focus on bullying prevention, violence prevention, suicide prevention, and conflict management and emotional regulation. Those are all pieces, and so many more that we can go into. But know that management, just because we've done the behavioral threat assessment, the management piece has got to be involved in there as well. Okay, Jason. Context and situation. So the context and situation is very important. Context is more than content, as most offenders do not directly threaten their targets. So we have to make sure that that we address this. Content and situation. The content is the unique interaction and dynamics between the perpetrator and the target and the situation that they share, right? Whether it be that boyfriend, girlfriend, that the bullying, people have been bullying me, I'm tired of it. There's got to be that unique interaction. And the big question here is, does the person pose a threat? Not did the person make a threat? So those are kind of one of the things that we have to really think about. Are they a threat, or did they make a threat? Okay, Jason. And here's a little thing that I want you to, and you can put this, you can drop this in chat if you want to. So here's just some words, right? 2 sets of words. Which set of words concerns you most? And again, we're thinking about the context. We don't know the context in these, but just which set of pretty, flowers, God, place, welcome, life, beautiful, meal. And then we have example of words number 2, nightmare, skin, rip, blood, kill, thrashing, devil, cut, threatening, knife, destruction, and God. So if you're reading a journal or see a poetry or something, which one would you put your spidey senses up and say, whoa, I need to tell someone about this? I see lots of 2s, which is exactly, those are some tough words over there, right? Number 2, those are some tough words that kind of hit you in the gut. But now I'm going to put them into context. So let's look at example word 2, since that was the biggie. Whoops, I think we've lost Jason. Jason, did we lose you? Looks like that we've lost Jason on our screen. Well, we'll keep going through. So let's look at those just a minute. We have those words. The weather was a nightmare as the threatening tornado approached with intent to kill. My skin felt like it was going to rip right off as the winds came thrashing through town. It was like the devil took a knife and cut right through the center of town, leaving destruction only on one side. I will never forget the sight of blood, but thank goodness God was watching over us and no one died. In that situation, that context and situation, those words aren't too bad. But then example number 1, those are good, happy words, right? But what if in isolation? Probably so. But if we put those words into context, listen to this one. You'd better get your life in order, buy pretty flowers, and enjoy your last meal, because God has ordered me to take you to a beautiful place, and he's more than ready to welcome you. Does that now does number 1, do those words concern you now? So we have to really think of context, the risk factors, the warning signs, and all of that put into place. And when we talked about poetry, violence, poetry, writings, social media, all of those kind of things, it really lends itself to thinking through. Exactly. It depends on the context. So we have to think about that time. Violence is preventable, and the school district threat assessment team is a crucial component to school safety. Again, those came from this book, which I absolutely love. So context is critical that we think about that. Okay, Jason. I love this. As an administrator, as a principal, when I had to deal with discipline, and even as a counselor, I would have loved to have had this back in the day. But this is the aggression continuum, how the kid shows aggression. Are they moving up on the aggression continuum? Do they move down? Are they fluid? Do they stay at the bottom? If we intervene with a behavioral threat assessment, does it come down? But let's look at the aggression behavior, low to moderate. So it starts out by pushing, slapping, biting. And on our behavioral threat assessment forms, it actually has this, and you circle and you show. And that way, as you revisit that, when you have those monthly meetings, you can revisit, oh, okay, where is he at on that aggression? He seems to be going down. Scratching, kicking, slugging, throwing objects, hitting with objects, fighting, sexual coercion. Then we get into the violent aggression, which can be serious or either lethal, strangling, beating, stabbing, raping, shooting, and bombing, all of those. So as we go through our behavior and we're assessing the behavior, we assess the behavior, this is kind of what we look at. And if it's a long-term situation, we may revisit this BTA and keep revisiting this kid and looking at his information, writing, documenting more, and seeing, hey, our management system's working. Okay, he was up here on the fighting all the time and throwing and hitting up. Now, he's just down to biting and scratching, which is not a good thing, but he's moving down lower on the continuum. So we have to really look at this. So I printed this off, and I would have hung this on my wall if I was an administrator still. But I really, really like this. I think this really gives a visual onto that continuum, because we talked about that pathway to violence, and this is how they're going about it. Okay, Jason. So the BTA level 1 tool, it does consist of 20 questions. There is a stopgap applied prior to question 13, and then you can determine questions 1 through 12 must be answered and reviewed to determine the process continues. You cannot skip those 12 questions. At one of the ones I was facilitating, they wanted to stop after like question 4. We have enough information. No, let's go through, because it is a systematic process. And so we want to make sure that we go through all those questions and see where we are on that one. If you determine that this person does not pose a threat, then you can stop at 12. But if you think, yeah, we're still not sure, we can't come to a conclusive evidence, then we'll go ahead and move through. So again, we just want to use this as a tool. It's just simply one tool that we help to try to process the threats that a student is making. Okay, go ahead. So how do we conduct the assessment? A student threat assessment team reviews all the information about a person of concern and identifies the enhancing and mitigating circumstances. Again, puts that context and situation together, discusses the unknowns, and addresses questions. Where is the student on the pathway to intended violence? The goal is to come to a consensus as to the level of concern the individual poses. So again, it's a team meeting. We discuss anyone who might have information about that student comes and brings their information. It's documented, it's written down. Okay, Jason? So this is just an example of a couple of the questions on level 1 form. So question 6 simply says, are there indications of a weapon, choice, or availability? If weapons are being considered, but not immediately available within the home, are they available through relatives, friends, or by other means? And so it says, be sure to ask both student and parent directly about weapons availability, security, and document their responses. So yes, there's indications of weapons of choice, such as that kid's shotgun. And because the kid actually said, yes, I have the shotgun at home. Are there any indications of a focused or unusual interest in acts of violence, previous school community attacks or attackers, weaponry, law enforcement, or military paraphernalia or appearance, antisocial characters, notorious criminals, murderers, or gangs, historical or fictional? Are there any indications of violent revenge fantasies or a desire to be an agent or martyr of a particular cause or belief system? So remember, what may be inappropriate to some may still be within the normal range, given the students or individuals' age, developmental levels, or cultural background. Have to take that into consideration. This question is similar to our question number 3, This one examines whether interest is a curiosity, a fascination, or if the interest is an admiration or antisocial characteristics as role models. So one of the things that we talk about in our BTA learning management system, our micro-credentialing piece, when Dr. John Van Drill, you hear a lot of him speaking and training, and he actually wrote the Salem-Kaiser model, assessing student threat for implementing the Salem-Kaiser model by Dr. John Van Drill. He talks about two scenarios. Both kids brought weapons to school, knives to school. One his girlfriend had broken up with him. He was very violent in the past, lots of issues going on. The other one brought some larger knives to school, which weren't sharp enough to cut anything. And he and some of his friends had this gaming and been on a gaming piece, and he was bringing them just to show his people. And so it talks you through each behavioral threat assessment on each of those kids and what the outcome would be. So those are really, really good questions. And then number 8, are there indications of a motive that would justify the act of severely injuring another person? Is focus on a specific target, which we go back to question number 5. It talks about, is there a target? Then there is very likely motive. Motives tends to revolve around a need to establish or reestablish control. A few common motives are revenge for lost love or humiliation. She broke up with me, he broke up with me. The desire to prove bravery after making a threat or taking a dare. If the situation is absent motive, then it may be a situation revolving around reactive aggression. Reactive aggressive talk often has triggers that agitate the situation rapidly. Such triggers are usually not motives, but should be identified to avoid or eliminate them in the future. So this is just a small sampling of those questions that we go through there. Okay, Jason? And again, we don't just put the questions out, say, oh, here you've had, 45 minutes to an hour training on it. You really have to go through that process. And again, if you're interested in going through that process and watching those videos and learning that asynchronous training, please, and getting that on your teaching certificate, please reach out to Jason. And through that process, then at the end of that, you have access to the forms. And on the forms, it's not just those questions. It's letters to the victims. It's letters to parents. It's how to interview. It's questionnaires for staff, all sorts of interviews or forms that you might want to use. So when we talk about confidentiality and threat assessment, who can we share this information with, right? And that's kind of one of the biggies, is because of FERPA, we just can't share this information. Well, there are some reasons why we can. And FERPA permits disclosure of personally identifiable information, or PII, without consent in circumstances, including we can release that information to school officials with legitimate educational interests, to appropriate officials in health and safety emergencies. So if someone says, I'm going to blow this place up tomorrow at noon, you better not come to school tomorrow, or I'm going to, whatever it is, you better watch out, I'm going to kill you, whatever. That is a safety emergency right there. So we can release that information to law enforcement as needed, or those who may be on our team that need to know, and to comply with lawfully issued judicial orders or subpoenas, which we know that if we get a subpoena, we have to release that information. But that health and safety emergency is the one that we fall back on. And so we can release that information as needed. Again, there's a document in the form book that talks about who you release that information to and why. And you have to do that in a timely manner. Who, when, and why. And so again, we have a webinar on our website about FERPA. So we have to address that situation. Okay, Jason. So here we got a new DOJ grant on see something, say something, do something, because it's not just enough to see something, say something, but maybe do something. And that do something piece is that text, OKS, which is Oklahoma Schools Threat, to 226787. Help us to keep your school safer. So if students, because we have the tip line where people call in, We have the email address, but kids don't do all that, right? They're not going to pick up the phone and they're not going to call and they're not going to send an email, but they text all the time. So this was developed so we could get the texting into the hands of kids. And so they can text anonymous tip. They can talk that back and forth. If there's a stranger on campus or a weapon on your campus, they don't want to tell anybody. They don't want to be that, snitch, right? And we talked about that climate and culture, but they can text it someone and let somebody know that this is going on and they feel unsafe. And then that is vetted through the Oklahoma Fusion Center. And that goes out to local law enforcement and to local administration. And so you can, students can get that information. If you want some of these posters, I think we have them where we can download them. Again, reach Jason and I. If you want them, we'll make sure that you get some of those posters or some of that information. Okay, Jason. Again, we've talked about school climate quite a bit. School climate is what we expect. You know, we expect the second day of summer to be hot and, 100 and something degrees like it was. But weather is what we're getting today, the rain. And so we want it to be sunshine, great, but weather is what we get because we have all these kids coming to us with trauma, right? And so we work towards that climate. We try to provide a good climate as we go through. Jason? And here's the piece on school climate. We need to assess the emotional climate. We need to promote listening and paying attention. Sometimes people just want to be heard. That's all. I just want to be heard. Pay attention to our kids. Meet them at the door, greet them, smile, say hello. Adopt a strong but caring position against the code of silence. That snitches get stitches, that code of silence. I'm not going to tell anybody. Explain, start at an early age, just why, if they feel like something is really going to happen or there's a threat, they need to tell someone. Implement systems to prevent and intervene in bullying. Again, State Department of Education has their own bullying section. They're amazing. If you want any type of bullying training, please, again, reach out to us and we'll connect you in those correct people. They also have a climate and culture section as well. Involve all members of the school community in creating a safe and respectful school culture. And that goes from no one is more important in a school setting. As superintendent, I was probably one of the least important people in that school. My important people were those teachers, those school cafeteria workers, those janitors, those ones that interact with those kids on a daily basis and make them feel welcome. And so all people are important. So when we talk about training on climate and school culture, please don't have a professional development day that's just your staff. Please include everybody because that's what makes the school climate positive and going forward. Foster and develop trusting relationships between each student and at least one adult at a school. We talked about that. I believe in the chat, I saw someone talk about, yes, they've been through one of those processes or seen that. Again, man, just find out who needs a connection and make that connection. Create mechanism for sustaining a safe school climate, such as a system that assesses and manages potential violence. Again, that is that behavioral threat assessment. I know back when I was middle school principal, I had a group of girls who just thought I didn't like them, right? And they were like, they were always in my office. Teachers were always sending them to my office, and they were the ones with the black hair and the black fingernails. And I thought, how can I get a hold of these kids? One day I thought, I'm just going to paint my fingernails, and this is back, a while ago, and I'm just going to, so I painted my fingernails black like them. And they were like, Miss S has black fingernails, and then one day on dress code, it was like, well, Miss S, you said we can't wear a tank top to school. Why do you have a sleeveless shirt on us? You're right. And so just listening to kids, paying attention and trying to get on their level and make them feel heard. Okay, Jason. So before we get, we'll go ahead and go now. So we have a document ready together, Oklahoma. It's an action plan. It is a phenomenal program. It's phenomenal resources. It is on the State Department of Education's webpage, and it talks about just instances that you can do. The one that I've been working on is community relationships and how to bring in communities and how to make people feel connected to their community. And so I encourage you to take some time to go through that document on our website and really spend some time looking at that. And it's just a really, really, really good document. Okay, Jason. Okay, so here's my contact information. I know Jason has put it in there. So Jason, what kind of questions do we have? Or does anyone have any questions? Any conversation that needs to be had? If Jason can unmute and maybe read some of those questions.
All right, Cindy, one that popped up about midway through that I thought was relevant is in the books that you talked about or in your studies of this stuff. Do you have information on like a common causation of the events? What, like the active assailants in school specifically, but maybe even outside, is there a common theme on what caused the perpetrators to do what they did?
The only common theme that we've seen is some type of grievance. A lot of them say they were bullied at school. A lot of them say, but there's not one thing we can say bullying leads to this XYZ. You can't say that. But a lot of the things are they didn't hear and they felt pushed away. They didn't feel seen. They didn't feel important. And so some sort of grievance, whether it be that grievance at home, and I'm just ready to, those ACEs, those traumas at home, but there's some sort of grievance. And a lot of it refers back to bullying, but not all of them. Again, we can't predict it, as I said earlier.
Okay, and there was a few other comments, and you feel free. I'm just going to throw this out there, and you feel free to expand on it. Okay. But these questions are going to be asked to appropriate people. In all honesty, we're not going to bring the kid in and start asking him some of the questions on these forums unless it's relevant. They're going to be directed at the appropriate people so that we can make great decisions on how to move forward. Am I right in that statement?
Yes, you are correct. And so, for example, I saw one here that they wouldn't want, as a parent, I would not want my child to answer these questions if they're weapons in school. So there was a situation, I forget, I'm not going to say what school it was, I forgot anyways, but they called the kid's parents. Hey, can we talk to your kid? These are some of the questions we're going to ask him. There was a threat that was made, a comment that was made. Do you mind? And the parent said, yes, you have my permission. Others will say, I want to be there. I'll be at the school. I want to be there when my kid is. So again, that goes on local policy. What does your school policy say when you have those? If it's law enforcement that comes in, again, have those discussions with law enforcement. And what does that look like in your school? So as an SRO, I see bullying being used as a catch-all. I spend time teaching my students about bullying. A single event is not bullying. Bullying is a continuous event. That is true, and we need to teach that piece. And that kind of goes along with that resiliency piece, again, that we talked about this morning, that resiliency. How do we teach kids to be resilient and to move forward? And so we're just those coping skills. Anything else? Most of the violent coping skills. Again, we talked about that as well, that resiliency and coping skills.
That last one there is pretty prevalent these days. What happens when that student comes back to school after they've made a threat or whatever the case may be? Because we know that by law we must educate our kiddos.
That is true, and that comes to that management piece, right? What does that look like? Intensive intervention management. Those we talked about, MTSS. Those management pieces on there. We're going to do, the specific drilling down on those intensive, maybe some tier 3 interventions. What does that look like? Who's going to be watching that kid? Please list the title of those books. Okay, I'm just going to put this one up here. I'll type them in. And again, whatever it looks like, whatever you think in your school that it can look like, those management. Again, all eyes on, supports, wraparound systems. Are they going to have, like, you can't bring the backpack to school. You have to check in, maybe late check-in, early check-in, late leave. What does that look like? That management piece is specific to each school district. So I'm going to write this down here. 15-minute focus. trying to talk fast. Management, and that is by Dr.
While you're typing, Cindy, I'll throw a few comments out there. This is very much a local controlled state, and this system fits well in that model. And that I'm going to reiterate what Cindy just said. That team that you're going to create, that you're going to meet monthly, that's going to be your local people. If you get deep into it and you move up to a level 2, then maybe we draw in some outside folks. But that level 1 is going to be your local, your school community, and those people surrounding that. So that administrator is going to be from your school. That a law enforcement official is going to be from your community. If you're blessed enough to have an SRO, great. That could be that law enforcement piece. It could be a municipal cop or a city cop. It could be a county deputy. It could be a highway patrolman. So whatever works for your community. And then that mental health professional is going to be the same thing. Hopefully it's someone in your community that knows your community, how they operate, and that's how it works.
Exactly. Thank you, Jason. And so I put in here Addressing the Salem Kaiser Handbook by Dr. John Vandrill, Saving Sycamore. I didn't really talk about that. Saving Sycamore was written by a counselor who was one of those averted school shootings. He came in, I wish I would have met you earlier. And he said, you care about me, but he brought a loaded gun to school. His plan was to do this. And she sat down and she talked her way. She talked the gun. I'm trying to say, she talked the kid out of it, right? And he handed over the gun. He said, I can't give you the gun. She said, can I reach and take the gun? He said, yes. And so, again, one of those, he'd already made a plan. He was ready to go and he wasn't going to give it up, but she could take that from him. So that averting targeted school violence, that was a targeted school violence situation that never happened. And so Saving Sycamore is a true story that just really kind of hits you in the heart. And that kind of goes with that de-escalation piece that we'll have in the fall, in the spring, as we come up. Again, how to talk to kids, whenever he told, as a counselor, he told, I wish I would have met you earlier. You're the only one who can talk me out of this. And it's just a really, really good book. And again, it's called Saving Sycamore. And I'm sorry I didn't have all of these written down in advance to add them to the chat. Is there a law that a student must have a return documentation from the facility? Again, local policy, I'm not sure if there's a law, but what does your policy say? A lot of times as an administrator, we would say, we want a certificate or a letter saying that they're good to come back. A lot of times they would not give it to us. And they would blame that back on FERPA. And so we would really have to argue with them and fight over them. We need this letter. And sometimes they would, and sometimes they wouldn't. So any other questions on here? And if I missed a question, all violence is not preventable. I agree. Assessments is critical. You know, that's true. Sometimes there's just people who do bad things, but we can do everything in our power to help prevent those kind of things. And again, just watching kids talk. We always hear that talk is cheap. Talk is free. If you see something going on first hour, and Johnny's typically a good student who's, participates and comes to school happy, and all of a sudden Johnny shows up and he's sleeping, he's not going on. He's not participating, he's angry. What's going on, right? What is going on with that kid? Talk to the counselor, talk to the second hour teacher, talk to the principal. Hey, keep an eye on Johnny, and let's all work together to keep our eyes on those kids. Anyone else have any parting words? I saw where Jason put the professional development certificate in here, so you can download that. Again, this will be housed on the State Department on the Engage website, probably be housed on our website as well. But again, if you guys want us to come out and do professional development training, please call us. I know we are booked starting July 27th through the second week in August, but we could definitely provide some training out. We get some people out, and again, we'd love to be out in the schools. So if there's not any more questions going on, feel free to go ahead and log off now. I'll hang around in case anyone, Jason and I will hang around in case anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask later. And again, thank you very much.
Are you answering Miss Cooper's?
No, I'm answering a private direct message.
Okay. I'll get Jody, I'm gonna answer your question here.
Alana, we were not given an evaluation feedback link. Feel free to send me an email, anything that you would like to give an evaluation feedback link. That'd be great. Always want to learn to do better. Are the level, let's see, you answered Jody, right, on the forms. Again, they're in our LMS for those of you that are still here, and our learning management system that you go through and watch those messages. Any other questions before we log off? Amanda, if you will email Jason, he will send you an email link. Jason, can you get that email to her?
Absolutely.
All right.
Amanda, let me know if you need my address. I've put it up there as quickly as I could, as many times as I could anyway.
We'll stay on for about 2 more minutes if anyone has any questions.
And Amanda, I can get you hours. I can't promise you that I can get you the one from the trauma, but I'll reach out to those folks and see if I can.
Okay, thank you all for attending. We appreciate it, and we hope that you have time to join some of the other wonderful programs that are out there through OK Edge. And again, holler at us if we can come provide any sort of services to your school. And with that, Jason, I think I'm going to sign off. All right, see you guys later.